Hello, teachers. This week's lesson is titled A Wife for Isaac, and today's narrative is about Abraham sending his servant to his homeland to find a wife for Isaac, and that wife will be Rebecca. We see in the narrative that Abraham sends his servant with the promise that God will send his angel before you. So when we are living in obedience to God's will, we can be sure that God will work in the background and he will be faithful to bring it to completion. And this wasn't just trying to find, he wasn't just a matchmaker, but he was working to fulfill the covenant of God to provide an offspring through Abraham, and that they would be a great nation and that they would bless the nations. So as the servant is obeying Abraham, he is also working in conjunction with God's will. So God will send his angel before him. And when the servant arrives in Abraham's hometown, we see him pray immediately. And we see that he has faith in the God of Abraham. He says, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. And the word steadfast love is a word that you will see throughout the Old Testament, signifying God's compassion and unconditional love for his people. And then after he finds Rebecca, the right one, his immediate response is to worship God. He says, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. We see him point to these two things, God's unconditional love and God's faithfulness. And this word reminds us of the big picture question, does God keep his promises? Yes, God always keeps his promises because he is faithful. He is faithful. So as the servant was obeying Abraham and being part of God's will to bring a nation through Abraham, God was faithfully bringing this to completion by sending an angel before him to make it happen as he had prayed. So just like God was faithful in working behind the scenes to provide a wife for Isaac, God was faithful in working behind the scenes to provide Jesus for sinners. So we see the Christ connection here. But how does this relate to us? How does this relate to the children? We see that he is also working behind the scenes now to faithfully bring people to him. And as we live like the servant of Abraham, by faithfully doing the will of God, we will see his angel go before us, and him, through his steadfast love and his faithfulness, gonna make things happen as he wills. So we experience God working, we experience God's faithfulness and his love as we are working according to his will. This is a great lesson to emphasize our missionaries. The previous unit, we emphasized the missionaries to Brazil. And this week, we're going to show a video of church planners in Indiana. God providing a wife for Isaac may seem trivial, but it was part of his grand plan to provide Jesus Christ through the family of Abraham. And we take part in this grand work by making disciples of all nations. If we are stagnant in our faith, if we feel like we don't experience the Bible as relevant in our lives, it may be because we are not doing or living according to God's will to make disciples, to bring the lost to his fold. But through this narrative, we can know for sure that when we live according to God's will, he will go before us and he will be faithful and steadfast to us. And just like the servant responded immediately with worship, when we see the faithfulness of God, it should also be our response to worship. And as we live our weeks in obedience to God's will, we can come together as a church each Sunday to worship Him for His faithfulness during the week.